Did you know that there are 6 presidential libraries that are housed on university campuses across the country? One of them is located right here in the great state of Mississippi. Big Daddy and I want to invite you along with us to the campus of Mississippi State University, where we're going to explore the Ulysses S. Grant Presidential Library. As you walk up the stairs to the Mitchell Memorial Library's 4th floor, or as in my case, you get off the elevator, you're greeted by the 6th pounder. It's a recent addition to the Grant Presidential Library at Mississippi State University. It's a U.S. Army piece cast in bronze in Springfield, Massachusetts in 1846. It weighs 876 pounds. As you'll notice as you read along here, it was restored by students at a local community college. I did not realize that one of the things you're exposed to at the library is such a vast collection of Abraham Lincoln memorabilia. This is the collection of Frank J. and Virginia Williams. This piece is called The Home Guard. It features 2 women who live on the border during the Civil War. One is cocking a revolver, and the other is clutching her companion for protection. Their task is to protect their homes. You're met with an interactive smart screen, I'll call it, where you can learn all sorts of things about President Lincoln. As you're about to see, Mississippi State has assembled a staggering array of artifacts from, of course, General Grant and President Lincoln. You can see these things presented differently, of course, from the Presidential Library's website and its footprint on social media. They present you with a little bit of the story about Lincoln's assassination. Of course, I didn't tell them that John Wilkes Booth is buried in Guntown, Mississippi. If you don't believe me, Google it. Next, you'll see, of course, the deathbed lithograph and a picture of Lincoln's funeral. This piece shows how stressful the Civil War was on the civilian population. This family is escaping to safety. This is a bust portrait of Abraham Lincoln taken by Anthony Berger. And next we get a picture of the beardless Abraham Lincoln. Let's just look around at some of the different portraits, and you can read for yourself from the signs on the wall what they are. One of my favorite paintings is this one right here. It's a portrait of Lincoln in prayer. I honestly think the bronze cast of these molds are a little bit freaky looking. A copy of newspaper announcing the reward available for information that leads to the capture of Lincoln's murderer. I thought this pull tab lithograph of Jefferson Davis was really cool. If you pull it one way, he'll be smiling at you. That's after the victory at Fort Sumter. And the other direction, which is you see here, is after the fall of Vicksburg. The famous flag painting of Lincoln at the window. This is another really cool part of the museum. This is, of course, the earliest publication of the Gettysburg Address in book form. As we move out into the Grant Presidential Library, look around and see some of these things, china and other items from the Grant White House. There are just so many things here. Honestly, it's almost overwhelming. And look here, I even ran into the president himself. I'm assuming this is a life-size statue of President Grant. This is a copy of Sherman's memoirs. One of the things that makes this so special is this was a copy that Sherman had prepared, had embossed, and delivered personally to President Grant. The two men were great friends, not only during the Civil War, but after. These are the belongings of Orville E. Babcock. Babcock served with Grant during the Civil War, and during Grant's presidency, he was what we would call in today's world his chief of staff. Babcock was indicted criminally 2 times during the Grant administration, but Grant seemed to take up for him, probably out of loyalty for his service during the war. This is one of 2 such opera cloaks that Miss Julia Grant had. Grant purchased her 2 to make sure that she would never be without one. The governor of the state of Mississippi was quoted as saying that all Mississippians, even those who were survivors of the late war, had great affection for the memory of General Grant. I can't imagine 1.5 million people gathering in the same place back in those days, but it seems that many spectators took part in Grant's funeral. Also, around 30,000 people marched in his funeral procession. You see Grant's death mask here, along with other things collected during that time. It says here that Grant was remembered fondly by Mississippians, especially those who were former soldiers, because of the way he treated them graciously at the surrender at Appomattox. This is what I call the funeral Bible of General Grant. This is a life-size statue of Grant, the statesman, with many of his accomplishments listed on the walls around him. This would be period furniture from around the Civil War that some local students took and restored and covered it in fabric that had imprinted upon it Grant's movements in and around Mississippi. I didn't do a good job videoing Grant's walking stick over there to the left, and also down at the bottom of this display case are his Chief of Staff's Santo Domingo diaries. You see before you an example of a Grant campaign button, and in the display case beside it, some documents that record his efforts at Reconstruction or his Reconstruction amendments. This library houses many things like the Grant papers that are a treasure trove for serious historical scholars. This display is of things you might have seen on soldiers during the Civil War. You see a diary. Up above you'll see a bayonet. And then here you see a cribbage box and a deck of cards. Probably my favorite item on display is what I call Grant's Order Notebook. Displayed before you is Grant's General Orders Number 11. He banned all Jewish merchants from traveling with the Army of Tennessee and from doing business. Lincoln quickly recognized Grant's mistake and rescinded the order. Grant was a student at West Point Military Academy. Here are some examples of Grant's scholarly work. If you pay close attention, you might notice what Ulysses S. Grant's real name was. Grant tells you in his memoirs that he was not a real fan of the war with Mexico. That soldier you just saw was outfitted like he would have been during that war. As we prepare to leave the museum, you'll notice that I didn't really bother to follow a chronological order to Grant's or even Lincoln's lifetime. I would bounce around from spot to spot and think, ooh, I want to see that. And so I did. I would encourage you to visit for yourself. There's so much history here to be learned. And for those that have watched the whole video and don't remember from the opening, the Grant Presidential Library is housed at the Mitchell Memorial Library on the campus of Mississippi State University. Thank you for watching. We hope you've enjoyed it and really want to encourage you to put this place on your bucket list.